Hey guys, thanks for checking out this video today on how to build a house out of wood. This house that I'm standing in is a tiny house that's actually on wheels. In fact, that's exactly what I do. I'm Bob and I build tiny houses on wheels. This house that I'm standing in is actually the biggest tiny house and the most expensive at over $500,000 that I've ever had the pleasure of constructing. Today in this video though, we're going to go through all of the methodology from the ground up of how I like to frame my tiny houses. Why is this important? Well, if you're building something on a foundation, then you're going to have a very, very strong house because ours are on wheels. So that means we don't want any drywall cracks. We don't want any problems from start to finish, where it leaves the shop till it ends in the customer's hands. So the things that we do to build our tiny houses to the highest strength specifications to ensure that no cracking happens is going to ensure that if you follow these practices, your house is not going to crack, pop, or anything in between, and it's going to be the most solid structure that you've ever had the pleasure of building. Okay, so right now, I don't know if you can tell this, but this is the kitchen. This is where the kitchen is going to be. So how do we build something so precise, so accurate? Well, it's going to start with drawings. You're going to want to have a really good set of drawings. Drawings are going to be your foundation for your mind. You can't build this stuff on a whim because you're going to spend so much time going back and forth. And so the more solid your drawings are, the more precise, the more detailed, and the more accurate your drawings are, the better your project is going to go from all angles. And when you're dealing with a highly complicated project like this, where you have lots of small walls, but also lots of different angles, and everything needs to line up perfect, and where your walls meet each other, those connections need to be right on. So we do extremely detailed stud by stud wall drawings of every single wall that is involved in these houses. Once we get those drawings done, it becomes very easy to do our wall layout. All of our houses are framed 16 on center, single plate on the bottom, double plate on the top. But we do something that's a little different. Instead of using the traditional single plate on top and then alternating your plates so that they kind of overlap and then they create like a top locking to all your corners, we use what's called a plate connector by Simpson Strong Tie. Now, this plate connector can be purchased pretty much anywhere, but you can also get them on Amazon if you can't find them in your local home store. And what they get connected with is your 1.5 inch standard joist hanger nails. That's going to create a really strong connection, but also it allows you to build the entire wall, put a cross brace on it, make sure it's nice and square. And for that, check out my description for how to square a wall using the Pythagorean theorem or the 3, 4, 5 method. And just to go over it really quickly, so you would measure, you pick a point on the bottom of the wall and you go 3 feet, then you go up 4 feet. And from those 2 points, you should have 5 feet. This method works great because you can multiply those by 2 or 3. So you could go, what would that be? That would be 6, 8, 10. Or you could go even bigger than that just by multiplying those 3 number sets off, 3, 4, 5. And that allows you, if those line up, it's square, whatever it is that you're referencing. And it's a really easy way to square off the walls. Once we got our walls figured out and our layout is correct, we're going to move into how do we secure those walls to our subfloor. And for more information about how we do our subfloors, we have other videos on this channel that go over subfloor construction. But what we do is we're going to put 2 nails every stud downward into the rim of the structure. Now, we don't put plywood on our house until after drywall, and that's just because we're in a controlled environment where we don't have to worry about the elements. So we just cross brace things and it works really well. In an outside setting, you might set your plywood on the outside of the wall and help square it and then stand your wall. So we want to put a couple fasteners downward through the bottom plate wherever there's a stud. And then on our interior walls, we use screws that screw through the subfloor and really lock things together. Um, how do we do our roof rafters? Well, our roof rafters are done the same exact way that we do our wall construction. We create a diagram of what our roof rafter needs to look like, and that includes our angles for our long to short points, and then it also creates our bird mouth points as well. And that rafter is then going to lock into your corresponding top plates. And as long as you make one rafter like perfect, you can use that as a template to then set on all your other rafters and then trace that out. And it's going to do a couple of different things. One, it's going to ensure that as you're moving down the top of the structure, that your walls stay nice and tight the whole way through. Because if they're tight on the bird's mouth and all of those rafters are exactly the same, then you're going to have a very uniform square structure. When we do a header, we nail every 16 inches, and then we're going to do that 16-inch pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 16 inches all the way down that header, and then we're going to flip it, and we're going to go 16-inch on center, but we're going to start 8 inches over from where we started on the other side so that our pattern alternates on each side. And that is the correct way to put a header together when you're sandwiching multiple pieces of material. And then we're going to laminate it based on whatever depth we need. So if it's a 1/2 inch, 3/4, 1 inch, whatever we need to bring it to our interior wall surface. And that just creates a really good insulating. And then we do, depending on the wall, we could do anywhere from 1 jack stud to 2 jack studs. But typically we like to do at least one. We don't, for regular residential construction, you should always try to get at least 2 jack studs and then a king stud right on the end. So then those 2 jack studs are what supports that header. Moving on back to the roof, there's a couple of different ways you can secure the rafters to the top plate. For the purpose of layout, I like to toenail the rafters to the top plate, and then I go back with a 6-inch Simpson truss screw, which is a fully threaded screw designed to hold rafters to the top plate. And that screw is going to go in on about a 15 to 20 degree angle straight up through the center of both top plates and into the rafter. And I do that on both sides the whole way down. And wherever there's rafters that die into a header, we use whatever specified rafter hanger that the job might call for. This is going to ensure that things are super, super solid. And then we move on to the roof. On the roof, it all depends on the pitch of the roof. So in this particular house, we have a flat section of the roof that we sheeted that entire section with 3/4 inch 5-ply CDX plywood. And the reason we did that is because of snow loads. When you have a very flat roof, you're going to have a lot of downward pressured weight. So we want to make sure that that weight is not deflected in the wrong manner. So you can't sheet a low sloped roof the same way that you sheet a normal sloped like 312, 412 or bigger. When we sheeted the 312 section of this roof, we sheeted that with 1/2 inch OSB, and our staple pattern is we foam glue with great stuff foam glue every single joist, and then we put our sheet of plywood down, and then our staple pattern is we fill the field, which is any joist in the middle of the sheet of plywood, with a staple every 6 inches. And on our edge, where 2 sheets of plywood meet, we go 3 inches. Now the staples, essentially, they're going to hold that plywood really tight to the rafter while the glue dries. Once the glue's dried, most of the strength is going to come from the glue, but we want to make sure that we got plenty of fasteners in, and we use 18 gauge 2-inch crown staples or 1.5 inch crown staples, whatever the sheet of plywood is. We want to make sure that we accommodate the correct depth staple fastener for that, and we use the just regular staples for that, and it works awesome. And So then once we've got our roof sheeting on, then we got to go into quality check. And we want to check, we're checking all sorts of different areas of the house to make sure that everything came out the way that it is. And on my long walls, I want to check to make sure that the wall is straight with the subfascia, which is the outside board that gets nailed onto the roof. And the way I do that is I'll take different spots throughout the roof, on the underside where the wall is, and I'll just measure and make sure that I'm getting accurate measurements the whole way down. If there is a section where a wall needs to be pushed out or a wall needs to be taken in, I like to use two pieces of wood that I will cut on the same angle. So I'll take, like, let's say two 2x8s, and I'll cut a diagonal through about 3 feet of material. And then I'll take those two pieces, and one of them I will screw and fasten directly to the rafter. And then the other one I will use as a wedge, and I'll pound it through, and it will spread that wall out or take it in and do whatever I needed to do without a whole lot of work. And the nice thing about using a system like that is when you're pounding that wedge in, it's going to hold it, and then you're able to fasten and course correct if you find an issue later. I like to use orange tags when doing my quality control. This way I can take a roofing nail and I just kind of hammer up that little orange tag with the note, and then I can go back then later and fix anything that didn't quite pass my standards, and then we sign it and we put it in a little box. And that's the easiest way for me to be able to keep track of checking all that quality control stuff. One of the other things that we like to do is we like to put this plastic down on the floor before we actually frame the walls. The reason we like to put the plastic down is when the drywallers come through and they bring mud and dust and all that kind of stuff through the house, it really causes a lot of work to have to scrape all that stuff up off the floor when it comes time to install the actual flooring in the house. By putting plastic down first before you frame the walls, not only does it protect the subfloor from water or spills, but it also keeps it super clean. And when it comes time to do the floor, take a razor blade, you razor blade that plastic out, roll it up and throw it out, and you've got a crisp floor, as nice as the day that it was installed. And that's just not something that's very common uh, in construction. You always got a jacked up subfloor. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. And next week, or I should say on the next video, we are going to be going through plumbing and electrical. And I'll probably be breaking those out into two different videos because there's a lot to go over as far as how we rough in electric and how we rough in plumbing. But either way, those are videos that you have to look forward to. There's also a video that I'm going to be posting following this one that tells the story of how we had to cut out the ceiling trusses in my shop in order to fit these massive tiny houses in here. So you want to check out that video too. And like always, thank you for sticking around to the end. If you're not subscribing by now, I don't know what you're waiting for. You're the person that I'm making these videos for, is the person that sticks around to the end. So make sure you subscribe so that you catch all the content. Like, comment, and in your comments, leave your questions. I'm happy to answer. I always answer them, and I appreciate you sticking around to the end.